Okay, it says we're live. Last time, the stream cracked out about 10 seconds after I got it started. So, the MMU2 is working. So, this is a 26-hour print. It's got 21 hours to go. So, there's geckos, 3 colors, and then two of these guys, and two 3D filaments. And I'll probably show you what I've got set up back here. So I shortened my tubes up here at the MMU. I've got the remainder of the tube, so it's a split tube, and I'm just running through the first arm of the Prusa spool holders, and it's working pretty good. It's still a little more friction than I'd like, but it's working okay. I also have some wipers, which is just a folded up paper towel with a little clip on it, just to make sure I don't get any hair or dust or whatever. And then I've even got a tiny spool. This is, it was Proto Paradigm Pro Spec. It's a little spindly spool, and it wants to kink more, but it's working so far. Definitely like having this split tube on there to make that work. Let me pull up Slicer, and I'll show you what settings I had to play with to get this thing going. Off of here. I don't know what I did with my other purge block. Anyway, let's pull this up. So let me switch back to my MMU2. Print settings is going to be my 0.2 millimeter layer height fast. Filament that I'm using is not that one. It is my generic PLA MMU2. So what I changed in here is the loading speed at the start is stock, up the loading speed from 14 to 28. Unloading speed at the start is now 100, which is stock, but 60 for a regular unloading speed, so that's a bit faster. It was 20. Filament load time, I dropped it to 10 seconds from 12. Unload time, I left the same, no delay. 3 cooling moves. Sped up the first cooling move to 20 millimeters a second, and the last cooling move 10 millimeters a second. And then the ramming, I did make some changes in there, but not to the ramming time. So it's still a 2.5 second ram. Line width is 120. Ramming line spacing is 160%. And I could probably go a little further on that, but it's pretty good the way it is. And then in the printer settings, under the single extruder multi-material setup, the only thing I changed was this extra loading distance. Now, normally that's set to 13, and when I made the changes that Chris Warakaki and Chris Riley, they had that set to 0. Or -2, something like that. And may have thrown my old purge block away. But what you're getting is if you have that loading distance set to 0, your purge block starts to, it over extrudes. It just like pushes a big old blob out on top of the purge block. And then the nozzle starts running into it and it's got problems. So I worked it up from 0, went -2. That was still too much. Went 2 millimeters at the time, 4, 6, 8, got up to 10, and that looked good, except it was still packing in pretty tight, so I changed that spacing wider. And that should be it. I think I didn't change the cooling tube length or anything else, and the tips on these things are looking really, really nice. So hopefully that will help somebody. Changeover doesn't seem too bad. It's pretty fast. Purge, pretty fast. I haven't had any issues with the filaments tangling or anything like that. What I did spend a lot of time on was just trying to get the extruder extruding, because I was having fails and it was under extruding down here. And I thought it was too much tension in the spool holders at first. So I thought there was too much tension in the spool holders, the tubes, these arms. So I eliminated them. I double checked. I built a strain gauge and pulled filament with the strain gauge through each of the channels, adjusted them till they were all pretty much equal. I checked the filament path through the tube, through the channel. It was fine. So what I was watching it really close, and what was happening was this little door where the Bondtech idlers are, somehow had a burr or something was in underneath there. So the door, if you watch, here comes the filament. I'll try to hold real still. When the filament hits that door pops out a little bit. And what was happening is it would pop out as the filament passed through, but then when it retracted, it got stuck. The springs weren't strong enough to pull it back. So the way I troubleshot that was first I tried it in single mode and it failed. So I unscrewed this tube up here at the top. I stuffed a piece of filament in there and told it to load that channel, and then hand fed it down into the extruder. I'm going to tilt you all over the place here. Hand fed it down into the extruder and printed a print, and it was doing the same thing. It would start off fine, was feeding, and then pretty soon it would just start skipping and doing all sorts of weird stuff. I had the springs pulled out and checked it for gunk in the gears and everything. So finally I pulled the screws out, pulled this back screw out, pulled the whole thing out of there, because I thought, well, maybe I had cracked that by over tightening the spring screws. And I thought maybe I'd busted that piece, or this pivot up here, or the place where the Bondtech idler goes, that little pin that goes through there. But that was all fine. So I felt around, and there was some little sharp edges on the thing. So I cleaned all those up with a razor knife, along the bottom and wherever I could find anything that was sticking out that might hang it up, and cleaned all the gears off and made sure it was all aligned, pulled the top off and double checked that, put it back together, and did a single color print through this. It was working fine. So then I did some little 10 millimeter by 10 millimeter by 1. I had two, they're little squares. I had 2 of them on there, so it would just pull a filament in, do a pass, purge, swap the filament. So it takes about like 10 minutes to print that. That's a good little print to fine tune the thing and see if your settings are right, see if your purge tower is working right, see if it's going to feed whatever. And that gives you 10 swaps or 12 swaps or whatever it is, depending on your layer height. But yeah, so I'm impressed. It's working swell. I feel more confident about starting these massively long print jobs with, at least it's going to complete, or at least not grind the filament into dust and, you know, just stall wherever it is and skip a layer and then screws the whole job up and can't continue it. But that's the way I'd approach it. If you're having problems, just troubleshoot one thing at a time, eliminate the variables. I am going to replace my spool holders with this new freewheeling design that I'm putting together. So I'll show you here. So it's got a spool spindle. It's going to have bearings inside. This will remove, so it's adjustable. It'll fit narrow spools, it'll fit wide spools, it'll fit down to 45 millimeter center holes up to 70 millimeters, and it fits inside these ones with the recess. It fits inside those. The little mini spools, like, well, I made a little mini spool for the Proto Paradigm stuff, and that was about the size of the raw spools that they give you, but that'll fit on there, and the taper will keep it centered and it'll roll nice, all sorts of stuff. So it'll have that. Then over here on the MK2.5, we're printing out the arm. So the base is like this. The spindle will sit here, and this arm right here, there'll be a pivoting arm that will have, it has well, I can show you. It comes straight out, and it has an angle in it that will kind of cock up, and there's be a screw hole there where you can mount washers or a weight or whatever. And the idea is that you counterweight the back end of it so that it's got a lifting bias to it. When you've got your PTFE tube and your filament out there and it's sitting there, it'll be biased to just put a little bit of lift on it. So as soon as the MMU starts retracting and ejecting the filament, it'll cock up like this. And if you have the split tube hooked into that, it'll form a more graceful arc without so much kinking in it, and kind of get it up out of the way so you won't have that going on. And you can probably move this a lot closer to the back end of your machine. Now, it will be tight because it's going to be kind of wide, but it should work. We'll see. Anyway, hey, Rover, it's working. So I'm excited. Been at it for all day yesterday and today, just getting the thing tuned up. But yeah, it's working nice. Very happy. So I was basically just trying to do a recap because I came on here earlier to stream and the stream failed within about 10 seconds. So thought I'd put this information out there. It might help somebody else who's having MMU2 troubles. But it's really a matter of going through it step by step and not making too many changes all at once. Take it a step at a time. And that's probably the one thing I didn't do is this extruder, the body, all the printed parts, is a new extruder. You know, I got that new with the MMU2 unit. And so I hadn't done a lot of prints with it, but it seemed to work fine when I did my first initial test print. So I really didn't think there was anything wrong with that. I thought it was something else I was doing wrong. So I spent a lot of time spinning my wheels trying to diagnose what was going on with that. But yeah. So we'll have 2 little bug-eyed geckos and a 3D fill. If you want to see a different angle, you let me know. Probably not going to stream for very long, but if the camera would focus. Let's change it over to silver right now. And the perch blocks are dense. I mean, I printed a little 50% scale single fill, and this perch block weighs more than he does, I'm sure. But the whole idea is, you know, fill the bed with them. And I did look at doing a purge to object. So, like, if I printed 2 fills and 2 geckos, and then purged to a third fill, that purge block would be mostly hollow. It did take 80% infill on the purge to object to achieve that, but you'd still have a, you know, kind of a cool looking multicolor little guy that you could give away, or something else if you didn't care what it, you know. If I had this model, I could print that as my purge object. So you can do a lot with that. Anyway, I'm excited. I'm happy. I'll probably post a picture in 20 hours on Twitter, and probably on the Prusa Facebook group, because it's been a while. Yeah, the settings are working, so I'm happy. Not a lot of stringing. I haven't had any jams. It's really, really slick. I do worry about these filaments tangling back here, but they seem okay. Yeah, you think it'd go faster when it gets done with the lizards, but not really. It spends a lot of time purging filament. But I gotta say that for the stock purge amounts, with these filaments, it's the colors are looking beautiful. They're clear. There's no bleed. Even, you know, this is black and a bright green. The green's just like really vibrant and not muddy at all. Same with the silver. They look great. So, all right. Well, Rover, minutes, so I'm going to head in and get something to drink because I'm thirsty. Been out here on and off for a few hours. Head over to James, watch his printer print. I'll see you later.